Oh, hey, Alan, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Very nice to be here.
Oh, happy Friday. We record and publish episodes every Friday because it's the best day of the week. We were looking forward to the weekend. Now, the question that I ask everybody is, how do you like your coffee in the morning?
Ideally, decaffeinated, with lactose-free milk, if possible, and a little sugar. That's the perfect
Oh,
coffee.
any reason for the decaffeination?
Yeah, it's. I had a terrible, almost a complete addiction to coffee, and now decaffeinated coffee has just made it so I have probably about a half of the number of coffees. I enjoy them, but I don't feel that need to have them that I used to. It's definitely been a good idea, and I sleep better as well. No, you're asking about the morning, but yeah, that's why.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when I first thought of that question, I typically thought I'd get a lot of maybe black coffee and lots of lattes. You know, I thought that would be the common answer. Yeah. Now, after 50 episodes, I can safely say you're in the majority camp where we have had this big change where people are really thinking about how much caffeine they have and how they consume it and how that affects their day as an entrepreneur. And I think that's one of the most insightful things I've learned through this process.
Well, there you go.
As somebody who has been decaf for years, highly caffeinated for years, I'm in a middle ground, I'd say, at the moment. I find it really interesting. Now, let's put the more important things on today's podcast, because I'm really excited about your subject, because it is far more niche but so important to a lot of small businesses. Now, Alan, what is it that you do and why do you do it?
So we equip businesses, generally small businesses, with the tools and the knowledge they need to write winning proposals for tender responses, both in the public sector and the private sector. And the reason we do it is because we see that as a route to growth. Because winning business, there's all kinds of growth, but winning new business, especially long-term business, is the way to help your business grow. So that's what we do, and that's why we do it.
Fabulous. So that's what I really want to dig in today, is the tender writing process. So if you're a small business and you've got this perception like, oh, I'm too small, I can't write tenders, where do I even start with writing tenders? Like, how does that small business, what's the first step? How do they need to go about creating this new channel of revenue? So
obviously, I'm based in the UK and an expert on that. Although I have to say, a lot of what we're going to talk about here is replicated in the USA and Canada, Australia for sure, and other countries. But the main thing that small companies have to understand and tell themselves is they have a right to enter this market. In fact, they're actually needed. That decision that they actually have a right to look at this is actually the most important one. Some of the barriers that they believe are there are perceptions. And if I can list off a few, because when we talk to new clients, we could almost give them a card. We don't do this, you understand, but we could give them a card with the answers to all the questions or all the comments you're going to make. One of them is, we're too small. And that depends upon the work that you're looking at. And generally, we guide small companies to work with their local authority in their local areas. Lots of positive reasons for doing that, which hopefully we'll get into more later on. But look at what you can actually do. Look at your capabilities. But being small isn't a bad thing. Being small means you can be flexible and efficient and cost effective. If you haven't done this, or it's not for us, well, I can tell you now, you definitely have a seat at the table for reasons to do with targets, etc. These companies, all small companies, should be looking at this. The other thing is, where do I find the information? And there's two parts to this. One is, it's all there, it's all online. But the biggest deal is that this information is available free. And this is it might be the most important advice I'd give to anybody, is that, especially for public sector contracts, private sector, it's different, that'll be via networks, but public sector contracts, so government contracts, both local and national, the information is published free. If you go onto Google and you type in government contracts, a whole series of these portals will come up that you can join and pay various amounts of money for. And I'm telling you now, I'm not criticizing their business model, but you do not need to pay them. This information is available free. So in the UK, we've got something called Contract Finder and Finder Tender. In the United States, you've got sam.gov. In Canada and Australia, I can't remember off the top of my head, but similar situations. And I only mentioned those because I've looked into, but I know Germany, Sweden, France, they all work in a very similar way. So companies to decide that they should look at this. And why should they look at it? One really simple reason. If you were to win a contract, say with your local authority, Charlie, and it was a 3-year contract to provide whatever services. And my favourite to use this, to bring it down to brass tacks, is our first client was a landscape gardener. And he wanted to look at contracts for looking after the landscaping of the schools in the area and other public buildings. And, just show you how kind of, that from everything else, but from the kind of small business, one-man business it was. He had a couple of part-time workers. And he just believed that this was work that other people did, the big companies did. It wasn't for him. And we showed that once you actually started to look at this, he realized that he was able to, not only could he do it, but he could do it more efficiently. And he was concerned, this thing about small, he was concerned that he couldn't do this work on his own. He would need maybe to take on a couple more people. So we advised him to build those 2 new people into the bid, the bid to pay for them. And my point about he won a 3-year contract, that 3-year contract enabled him to take on other work, it was the foundation for his business. I think he employs 10 or 12 different people now. It's huge success. And we did it was our first client, and we did it as a kind of, let's see if we can do it, if you like. Yeah. And hugely successful and he's got to the size he wants to. I don't think he wants to be bigger than that. He's very, very happy. But for him, it's staff-wise 10 times growth. Financially, he's on a completely different level now, because now he's looking at contracts for other work. But the other thing is, there's one thing that is also important, is that there's a belief if you take on a public sector contract, if you do like a local authority, we call it here, that's some kind of exclusive. No, there's not exclusive. If you take on a contract, you can still do other work. In fact, you could argue, there is an argument in certain areas, and maybe the landscape garden is not the best example, but certainly in other areas, in tech, for example, if you were to get a contract for 2-3 years, where you're going to guarantee to get paid for all that time, no chasing your invoices. In this country, there are 3 pieces of legislation and 2 frameworks to make sure small companies get paid. And you can't replicate that in the commercial world. But then it does enable you to say, well, I've got this foundation of my business. Now I can maybe take not chances, but I can look at something, maybe take a calculated risk in another part of my business because we have this foundation there. And that's why we describe this as it's a route to predictable growth. Because if you do this properly, then it's not, there's all kinds of things about pricing, etc., and look at, and other comments we can get into. But if businesses look at it as a foundation to growth, rather than a problem, also take the politics out of it. This is nothing to do with politics. It doesn't matter what the colour of the government is in. It doesn't matter the colour of the councils in, because governments now at local and national level have to procure everything. They do very little themselves. I'm in an area in Preston in the northwest of England, and actually for the first time the local authorities actually taken the refuse collection back in under staff, just because there was an issue with a contractor. Absolutely, that's a unique situation. Whereas once upon a time, council used to employ all these people. They don't anymore. They procure everything, every single service. So when people think, well, is it for our business? Well, think about if any of your services can be offered to an organisation like a local authority, or does what I do affect the general public? Is it something that affects them, that benefits them? Because ultimately they're the customer. If you look at your business that way, then there are opportunities there. Short question, okay. Long answer, Charlie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's all really, really useful information. So, okay, let's say now, I'm now as a small business owner, I'm getting excited. I'm really getting excited. Going, well, there's actually something here for me. Maybe what's this possibility? Now, you mentioned some possible barriers there. What's really changed in the tender world? Speaking with like local authorities, that has previously held these small business back. So you mentioned, I'll give you one example, which one you mentioned was getting paid. You know, that is a really, cash flow is so crucial and important, and getting paid is really important for a small business. So what has changed that is those barriers have now reduced so that it's far more accessible for these small businesses to work with local authorities?
Yeah, it's a very important point. Over, I think it goes back, I think it's 7 years, 6-7 years. And it is true to say that the government at all levels was a very, very poor payer. You had to chase them, and that's no good. That's something that a large company can swallow. A small company definitely can't, obviously. And yet, so they brought in legislation to make it so corporations had to pay small companies more quickly, but forgot that they actually were a large corporation effectively, in as much as and they didn't bring the legislation at the same time. So they're putting a huge amount of pressure. So from that point of view, like I said, the 3 bits of legislation in the UK and 2 frameworks, and I'm sure this is mirrored in other areas. So to make sure that as a small business, you don't have to chase. If your contract says you're paid every 30 days, you are paid every 30 days. And this is independent of any other issues that the local authorities and local authorities will always tell you that they're poor. Always, they'll always tell you that. They're always cash hungry or cash poor. But contracts are separate than they've agreed, it's signed, you're paid. So that's one thing. But I actually think the bigger thing to go with that is that it's way more transparent. So in the bad old days, a lot of these deals were done, it was who you knew. Deals were done over a drink. And I'm oversimplifying, but yeah, I think everybody listening will know what I mean. It was just done, it was who you knew. Now, I'm not saying that relationships don't matter, because relationships still matter, like all kinds of business and all networking. But it is way more transparent now. So if a contract is awarded, in the same place we can look for new contracts, it also says transparently what was awarded previously, who it was awarded to, for how much. And it's not a perfect market, because I don't think a perfect market exists. I speak to companies on a daily basis. Well, I thought we were going to win this, and this other, the incumbent company won. Yeah, if you're a preferred supplier, then you have an advantage. But the fact of the matter, in as much as you understand the client, it's not about the procurement system is very clear. And it is slightly overwhelming in some ways, which is why we get involved. But it is a very disciplined way that it's approached, and it is dealt with by people. You put a procurement, and maybe 1, 2, or 3 people will look at the tenders and evaluate it themselves, and they have to put their name to that. So while I wouldn't say it was perfect, it's a great deal better than it was. Also, again, just focus on the UK. In October, comes to force a whole slew of new legislation to remove some other barriers. So, for example, there were some contracts you look at where your balance sheet needed to be so strong that there was no way was an SME be able to get near that. However, they're removing that. Some of the insurance requirements are being lowered to sensible levels, etc., because there was just no need for it. These are slow moves in the right direction. Like I said, I'm not going to say it's a perfect market, but getting a foot in the door could transform your business. That's the point. Is it worth the effort? That's the question. Yes, it is worth the effort for the right business.
So that leads me very nicely on to the next question. That'll be my next question. I'm thinking very selfishly, because as I am a small business owner and I don't do bid writing or tenders. It's something that crossed my mind maybe 8 years ago. I was like, is there an angle here? And I did exactly what everybody else did. I was like, no, I'm only a very small company. I think there was only 4 of us at the time. I don't have the time to write all of these tenders. I don't even that lights decided to stop working. Sorry, I'll just edit this out.
No problem.
2 seconds. So I don't have the time to write all of these bid tenders, because I've got to do the actual delivery work. I've got to go and do the other sales funnels. Everybody is wearing multiple hats. So when we always look at introducing a new channel, it's how can we efficiently add that into our daily mix as it is. So what are your top tips on how do you write a a bid tender or coach somebody through a bid tender, so you increase the probability that it's going to win, that you're going to get it. So if you can put all this time and effort into something, you've got a really good chance that you're actually going to get it.
There's one key thing, which breaks into several areas. But the one key thing is that your response, when it's written, has to be in what I would call empathic language. It has to be all about the value to the client. We'll just take a local authority. It has to be all about what they need. I mean, we always say benefits, not features, but it's taken to an nth degree. You don't really sell to the government in this. It's not a marketing exercise. You can't send your brochure. That's not what it's about. In fact, there are certain situations where the response would be anonymized, and if you put any logos and things like that, they'll all be removed. But the language that's used is about absolute clarity. So no misunderstandings. And there's the other things, not just about the making sure the value, but also you've got to bear in mind the person that's reading this is not a practitioner. They're not the expert. So you must remove any technical language unless you'll ask a technical question. If you don't ask a technical question, do not put a technical answer in. Make it really, really crystal clear. But the other thing is, in order to meet that value, turn your response into a value proposition. That's what you're doing. Why should it be you over somebody else? And what do you bring? Is to research the client. Now, if we think about our commercial customers, researching your clients is quite hard unless you know them very well. The government's really easy. Because if you say you're a local authority, you can go onto their website, you can see their business plan for the next 5 years, you can see you can see what their values are, you can see what their challenges are, and you can start building, you can see what the bigger picture is. So what that contract might be one piece of work, but actually is part of something, maybe it's something about urban regeneration. So you can see the bigger picture. And if you can build some of that into your response, this is what becomes a differentiator. So if you're in a market, because the other thing is, well, there's lots of companies that do what I do. And well, one of the differentiators you can use is to make sure you do your research, that you put things across, that you understand what you're going into, you understand your client, because all the information is there. A couple of hours spent on their website will tell you so much, and you build that into your response so that when you read it thinking, they actually get what we're after. That's a huge differentiator, especially if you're in a crowded market. That's what makes your response jump out, rather than just be, oh, no, it will jump off the screen now rather than being written. But that's the biggest key. It's harder than it sounds because it is a copywriting exercise, and we all know now. I think copywriters, normally we're talking about marketing copyright. It is an immense skill, is copywriting, and a lot of copywriting is about getting something across in a very simple fashion, not simplistic, but simple and easy to understand fashion. But the content really matters from a value point of view. How do you show what you can do, but how does it solve their problem? If you view that the only reason they're putting something out to tender is they have a problem to solve, and you're out to solve that, and also to show that you understand them, you want to work with them, you really, really want this, not just the money. The business is, obviously you want the revenue, you want the work, but what they want to see is that you want to partner with them and work with them and deliver what they want to deliver.
What I'm hearing, and let me kind of summarize everything that you've said. So, like I said, it isn't a marketing exercise. To me, it actually sounds like a sales exercise, and I'll clarify that a little bit further. This is not exactly what you said. It's not me, you, the small business selling at the person. It's using high-level selling techniques of the prospect, the local authority, feeling like they've been heard and understood, that you've actively listened to their brief and their request. And the difference between what you would do on a sales call, we would ask lots of open questions, we would actively listen to what they need and repeat back to them exactly what their requirements are. That is the core, very simplistic sales call if you really want to win. And then you say, here's all the solutions, here's everything that you get after you've used all of our services. But the difference is, you haven't got a person just telling you this information. you've got to go and find all of this information and details afterwards. But like I said, if you maybe localize, I'm going to use the landscape gardener as an example. There's not many districts, especially in the UK where we are a smaller country, it's not many districts you could feasibly go to at all times. You know, for example, if they are Preston based, they're not going to go and get a contract in London, for example. They're adding those extra, 200, 300 miles to your day, to your business. That's probably the dumbest business move I've ever heard. But say you've captured Lancashire, Cumbria, you've gone to Cheshire, Greater Manchester, you've slowly gone to all your local authorities and you've slowly expanded out. Really, you only have to research one local authority at a time. So if you do a day, if you allocate a whole day just to research everything about the local authority for that region or those areas, you've kind of done your work for a good month or two, you know, as you're trying to bid for these contracts. And then you move on to the next one, maybe next month. So it's a chipping away game, a consistency game. And that's actually kind of reassuring for me as a business owner. I'm always wanted, I don't want to completely keep it feeling like I've completely exhausted something or completely exhausted a channel. So that prospect's really exciting. Now, you said there, obviously, it's always when we get to we've talked about the language and then how we're presenting this information and turning it and the copywriting. But what is the big difference between a copywriter and a bid writer? Okay,
so to generalize, when we talk about a copywriter, generally speaking, we'll be talking about marketing copywriting, and this is obviously with how much done on digitally now, it's become a really important profession. So generally, although they'll specialize in different fields, say finance or others, you'll have web marketing copy, your website, your landing page, etc. You'd have social media copy. You'll have your marketing copy, whether it's physical or otherwise. That's all designed to get across what you do and why somebody would want to work with you. And it should all work together seamlessly. So your website, your physical brochure, your everything should work together. Your message on social media should all reflect that. And it should be absolutely consistent. And getting something across in, let's say, one paragraph rather than 10 paragraphs is a real skill. And I'll just share a quick story, if I may, where this was pointed out to me a long time ago, and I didn't actually realise until a few years ago how relevant this was. I'm from a place called Blackpool, which is a seaside town, and we would have the conferences for a lot of the, I think that year was the Conservative Party conference. We had one of our family's hotels, we had some journalists in, and we had somebody from the Press Association, and I made a flippant comment about the tabloids and the quality of writing. And he put me in my place and corrected me quite quickly and said, whatever you think about the actual story, these are the best and highest paid journalists there are in the country. Because in a tabloid, you need to get the essence of the story across in one paragraph, and then encourage people to read. It says anybody can write 10 paragraphs, be verbose and write for the Times. I think maybe, in fairness, the Times writers was being a little flippant, but his point was that's a skill in itself. And I thought, and that's absolutely true. Writing a paragraph that encapsulates an entire story. So now if you take that to marketing, then same thing, you have to encapsulate what the business is doing. Okay, so that's all good. And that can be quite glossy and fun. Copywriting, when you go into bid writing, is more disciplined. So unfortunately, you have to unlearn some of the things you've learned as a marketing copywriter, because you're not talking about bells and whistles. You absolutely not. And you're not wasting time building a picture the way that you would normally do in a marketing exercise. What you are doing is looking for clarity of language. And the other word that's incredibly important is relevance. A response will take some time, but often you'll have, say, 500 words to write. They'll ask for a detailed answer in 500 words, which is not that many. So the relevance of everything that you respond, every word that you put, that has to be there for a reason. It has to be relevant to that tender. So you can't just lift and shift everything you've done before. Some you can, but we can get into bid libraries later. But you can't just lift and shift, oh, this is what we did last time, and because it might not be exactly the same. It might not be the same local authorities. You mentioned might be a different client, and therefore there might be a shift, and they'll see, well, this doesn't make any sense. Another example to highlight relevance is, just to say from a bid writer's point of view, is oftentimes they'll ask for a CV of the main people involved in the business. They don't actually mean a CV, even though they say that. What we call them is called a pen portrait, because the only information they want to know about that person is what's relevant to that tender. So the only information you give them is the experience you've got that's relevant to that tender. You strip everything else out, because what's the point? It's not relevant. And I'm not just talking about not putting your GCSEs in. I mean, generally, it has to everything has to be there. So if you think from a bid writer's point of view, the other side is, it's not just about the writing. When you need to take that company through the steps, through the process. There are multiple documents to go through. You need to guide them through. So there is a bit more hand-holding. So you have to understand the process more than you just write me 500 words on this. And I'm not in any way putting down or simplifying the skill of copywriters that aren't bid writers at all. It's just that it's a lot more disciplined, and you could argue, I suppose, that it's not much fun by comparison, but I really like it because the result, if you get it right, can be fantastic. But they're the key differences. It's the discipline of the language, that you're not able to say anything really other than what's absolutely necessary, and the relevance to make sure that almost every single word has to be there for a reason.
No, I resonate with that, but I'm a marketeer, and I know I have a very certain writing style that fits. Like, I get very good at what's called conversational writing, as in conversational writing for sales. Like, if you want me to write dialogue that's going to get you to have a conversation with person, and you win whatever the objective is of that conversation, I'm your girl. Whereas you ask me to write web copy, like, I'm pretty all right at it from experience, but I can probably point you to two or three other writers who are better, because that's their specialism, because that's what they're really good at. And again, social media, don't ask me to do social media writing. Like, I've done too much sales writing over the years, in my specialism, that I find it so hard. Like, if you ask me to write 2 words as the caption on the social media, I've got that, and I can do I call the fundamentals and stuff. But what we're talking about is really great copywriting. It's like those little details that it just you look at it and you go, wow. And the only kind of, if you're not in this world, the only comparison is like a movie. If you watch a movie and you go, wow, this is a rubbish movie, but you're looking at it, it's like, these are great actors, the costumes look great, the studio lighting looks great, why is this a rubbish movie? I bet you 9 out of 10 times it's the writing, and the writing isn't bad either. Like, if an average person wrote that movie, you'd go, wow, that's really good. But because we have so many movies out there now with incredible writers who are just so nuanced in the detail, I won't go into it, how you go about it, because I could talk about this all day. But they are so nuanced in that writing that you just know, wow, that film was fantastic because of the story. Now we're filming this and recording this as Pixar 2, Pixar Inside Out 2 has just come out. And that is an example of fantastic and great writing, if you really want to know the difference. So compare that film with anything else and you'll really understand and get it. Now let's pivot. Let's turn finally to our to you and your business as well, because we've been talking about other business and helping their revenue streams and helping them grow. And we've also talked about, I really want to just emphasize stability in a business. I think that's underrated in this chaotic world that we live now, that's fast paced. Any stability and foundations that you can add is quite reassuring, and that's really essentially what you give. Now we turn to your business. So what are some of the challenges that you have been facing, and how are you looking to overcome them?
Well, I think I read somewhere, I can't quote who it is, it's probably attributed to many people, that the business you start isn't necessarily the business you end up with, or something along those lines. And we're finding ourselves in this position. And to give a very small potted history, we set our company up to, as just three of us, myself, my wife, and another director, as a small consultancy, initially with the energy industry, and then we won a contract with the local authority. And then we thought, well, actually, we've got experience here we can help with. But it was very, very much, we work with small companies. We want to be an enabler. So we want to be to train and supply the tools, etc. We were really clear on that. The problem with that is that got us through the door. We won clients with that, but invariably the conversation changed. And we'll come back to your comment about the fact that with small businesses, you're actually wearing many hats. Your operations, your finance, your HR, your everything. And this is quite a bit of work to get into this. So they would invariably say, well, could you work with us for a bit longer? So we'd work on retainer for a period of time, always with the aim that we would back ourselves out. And what would happen is one of two things. They'd look to take somebody on, which we would also train to be a bid writer. Or if they were lucky enough to take somebody on full time, although a full-time bid writer professional was quite expensive. So the idea was to train somebody. Or they say, could you recommend a bid writer to us? And we have a good selection of fabulous professional bid writers. But what became really, really clear when we got more successful is there is a shortage. There is a shortage of really good, excellent writers who it's not just the writing, it's understanding the process and understand all the nuance of how this works and actually get something out of it, because it isn't for everybody. And that's made us look really hard about, we made some reasonable assumptions, but I think we need to check ourselves on whether those assumptions still stand, whether they were the right in the first place. We know that businesses want help in this area. That's something we have proved is definitely right. But we're now looking at whether what we should be doing is looking to train or retrain, or somebody uses the phrase upskill. It's not actually upskilling. It's changing, for those that are interested, where we should train people to bid write, whether them being established copywriters or not. That is quite different, and then offer those services out to our clients. There is some mileage in that, but it's quite a change. And again, we're a small company thinking, well, how do we do that without taking our foot off the gas with the clients that we've got? And do we do that digitally? Well, no, I don't. I don't want to suddenly build an online course, and I don't really want to do that. So it's a challenge we haven't solved yet. It's a good challenge. It's a positive challenge because it's recognizing that there is need in the market for this. And we also did a bit of looking that actually it's further afield outside the UK. It's also an issue. So there is possibly something there. I think maybe, if I'm being honest, it might be a little bit too big for us to solve on our own, which is maybe looks at partnerships. That's other things we could look at. But that's so a challenge, not a scary one. And I'm glad it's a challenge that we've discovered rather than somebody else pointing it out to us, which sometimes happens. But we're still trying to work out how to approach that, and we're seeking advice from people around us and companies that we work with to see how best we can do that.
That's exciting because there isn't, from my experience anyway, there isn't that many opportunities. Let me rephrase. It doesn't happen often when you yourself realize a supply and demand differentiator in the market, because the typical challenge is the differentiation challenge, where you don't want to be commoditized because everybody else is swarming into the market. For example, I started as an FCMO at the very start when I was trying to just teach people what the hell an FCMO is, and now it feels like we're everywhere in a very, very short space of time. So you to have the opposite challenge and problem where, because there's been this lack of understanding on bid writing and tender process, there is a lot less bid writers, and this is your specialism and expertise. It is such an obvious step for you to go into, and because you train people, I always do say, if you train and coach people on your specialism, you do have a higher level of thinking about it, because it's that fit. It's there. Now I'm going to absolutely butcher the principle, but if you know a subject and you try and explain it in a really complicated way, you don't really know your subject. But if you coach it and you simplify it down, you're able to simplify it down and create analogies around it, then you really, truly do know what you're talking about. And that sounds like the position that you're in, which, like you said, these are the challenges that are really good for business. These are the challenges that are really good to solve. Because like you said, it's like, there's a route here. You might not have all of the details yet. You're seeking advice from lots of different people with different experiences, because there are multiple ways of approaching it, and it's finding what's the best fit for you. So I'm excited for you. And that's a really great example. So thank you so much for sharing. Like, these are the positive challenges in business. So I'm going to wrap it up there and leave it there, because I think that's a really nice place to leave it.
Thank you.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you, Alan, how do people find you?
Well, I'm all over LinkedIn, and it's about the only social that I actually do. I'm not great on LinkedIn, but
again, doing copywriting skill.
And the company is Brown Hat, which is just for. We do get asked where did that come from, because I didn't realize there's Red Hat and Black Hat. Brown Hat came from my surname Brown, myself, my wife. Our other director is called Steve Hatton. That was the hat. That's the science behind that name. So Brown Hat, we have the simplest website. But basically, I would say reach out if you have a question. We spend a lot of time just advising, saying, look, demystifying. We do a great deal of that, where it just says, look, just go and look at the market. And what we love to do is to spend time with people, go onto the portals, show them what's there. If in their discipline, whatever it is, anything, I don't know, cybersecurity, anything, whatever it is. And there's a look, and in the right areas, then their eyes pop out of their head and say, right, okay, so it is worth it, that this is what you have to do. And then we need to look hard at the company and build a value proposition, all these other things, which we, too much time to go into, or not enough time to go into. But that's what we like to do. We like to just open it up. We have a really big aim, Charlie, which is not for us to do. We would like, in the UK, we would like 50,000 more businesses to enter the public sector. They wouldn't be clients of ours, and we can't do it on our own, but that's what we'd like. Because, there is a need for these small businesses to be involved to make things more efficient, more cost effective. And also, the last thing I would say, Charlie, is that working with small businesses, certainly just come out to the local authority in the boroughs, it keeps wealth in the community. It keeps the money that's being paid by the local community in the local community supporting local businesses. That can't be a bad thing.
I love it. That's amazing. Because there's a mission. That's a beautiful mission. And even, I know you said, like, you can't do it by yourself, but sometimes you just set these lofty goals and these lofty visions, and you chip away at like working towards these goals. Hey, Alan, we could be talking in 5 years' time, and we could be at that mission. You could be achieving it. So go for it. That's my message. Absolutely go for it. Well, thank you so much, Alan. Absolutely go and check Alan out. Go speak to him. Go contact him. And use his skills. Even if you don't even think there's a 1% that it is worthwhile for you, you never know what ideas you get from it. And yes, it can, I want to just reassure people, yes, it can sound like a lot of hard work. But the opposite is, if you don't have that secure revenue in your business, that foundations in your business, I'll tell you now, it is 1,000 times harder running a business without it. So this is the good hard work that can almost secure your future of growth. See you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.